biodiversity. According to UN Conference on Environment and Development, 1992, biological diversity means the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are a part. This includes diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystem. Another scientist, Wilson, also said in 1992, eliminate one species and another increases the number to take its place. Eliminate a great many species and the local ecosystem starts to decay visibly. Productivity drops as the channel of the nutrient cycles are clogged. More of the biomass is sequestered in the form of dead vegetation and slowly metabolizing oxygen-starved muds or is simply washed away. Less confident pollinators take over as the best adapted bees, moths, birds, bats and other specialists drop out. Fewer seeds fall, fewer seedlings sprout. Herbivores decline and the predators die away in close concert. As the totality of genes, species, and ecosystems of a region. The variety of plant and animal life in the world are in a particular habitat, a high level of which is usually considered to be important and desirable. Ecological complexity is a multidisciplinary field of research that borrows tools and concepts from the core disciplines of complex while many more species are believed to exist. 1.5 million named species, 70% of which are invertebrates. In a paper published in the Quarterly Review of the Biology September 2017, researchers from the University of Arizona have estimated that there are roughly 8 to 100 million living species on Earth, over 1,000 times more than the current number of described species. A recent census conducted by the Hawaiian University supported this study. Around 20,000 new species are described each year and new biological communities are still being discovered. What is the need to conserve biodiversity? The concept of biodiversity was coined at the intersection of science, applied science, and politics. Moreover, though most who talk about biodiversity think that there is something important about it, there are very different rationales for its preservation. Thus, some have argued that biodiversity ought to be conserved because it is a feature of the natural world that people enjoy and find useful. It has what conservation ethicists call demand value. It is a human end in itself. However, there are alternative instrumental reasons for defending biodiversity. For example, an influential line of thoughts connects biodiversity to ecosystem function, and the ecosystem function is of great economic importance. Such instrumental rationales for the conservation and preservation of biodiversity are complicated by our considerable ignorance about many threatened ecosystems and the biodiversity they protect. Most extinct species are yet to be described by taxonomists, and we know very little about distribution and abundance of most of those that have been described. Close to 1 million species of arthropods have been described, but we can access the conservation status of only about 3,500 of them. Thus, there are many species threatened with extinction about which we know very little. However, there is a precautionary principle to be urged against this thought. If we let a species go extinct, we have foreclosed on the possibility that we might discover the species to be important. We ought to preserve biodiversity to hedge our bets. We maximize what conservation ethicists call option value. Before proceeding further, let's understand what is instrumental rationality. Instrumental rationality is a pursuit of any means necessary to achieve a specific end. Have you ever heard the expression, a means to an end? Instrumental rationality means doing whatever it takes to achieve a goal, so long as it aligns with your ultimate objective. The idea here is that only the end really matters. Now let's talk about the levels of biodiversity. There are 3 different levels of biodiversity. The first one is genetic diversity. It is a level of biodiversity that refers to the total number of genetic characteristics in the genetic makeup of a species. It is distinguished from genetic variability, which describes the tendency of genetic characteristics to vary. Genetic diversity serves as a way for populations to adapt to the changing environment. We can also say that genetic diversity is all the different genes contained in all individuals like plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms. It occurs within a species as well as between species. Second is species diversity. It refers to the variety of species within a region. In simple words, species diversity is the number of different species in a place, also called species richness. Species diversity is an index that incorporates the number of species in an area and also their relative abundance. The third and the last level is community and ecosystem diversity. Ecosystem diversity refers to the diversity of a place at the level of ecosystem. It has 3 different perspectives. Number 1, alpha diversity. It means within community diversity. Alpha diversity refers to the diversity of organisms sharing the same community or habitat. Next is beta diversity. It is between community diversity. It refers to the diversity of organisms sharing 2 habitats. The extent of change in community's composition among sites. The third one is gamma diversity. It is the diversity of the habitat over the total landscape or geographical area, and it is called gamma diversity. Among these, alpha and gamma diversity are fairly straightforward. It's hard to grasp what beta diversity means, since it's usually used quite loosely. It's something of a bridge from the local alpha to the regional gamma scale. Beta diversity can refer either to directional variation along an environmental gradient or non-directional variation among sample units in an area. Now you can ask, what are sample units? Sample units are distinct and overlapping entities such as quadrates or transects, individual plants, branches within a plant, etc. Now that we have covered the general introduction of biodiversity, can you tell which of these pictures has more biodiversity? Conservation biology is the scientific study of the nature and the status of Earth's biodiversity with the aim of protecting species, their habitats, and the ecosystems from excessive rate of extinction. It is an interdisciplinary subject drawing on sciences, economics, and the practice of natural resource management. Conservation biology is a response by the scientific community to the biodiversity crisis. It is a new synthetic field that applied the principles of ecology, biogeography, population genetics, economics, sociology, anthropology, philosophy, and other disciplines to the maintenance of biological diversity throughout the world. In fact, the fundamental goal of conservation biology can simply be stated as saving the species. Conservation biology is concerned with the phenomena that affect the maintenance, loss, and restoration of biodiversity in the science of sustaining evolutionary processes that engender genetic, population, species, and ecosystem diversity. It is the challenging situation of biodiversity and habitat loss that resulted in developing the science of conservation biology. It has 3 major goals. Number 1, to document the full range of biological diversity on Earth. Number 2, to investigate human impacts on species, communities, and ecosystems. Number 3, to develop practical approaches to prevent the extinction of species, to maintain genetic variation within species, and to protect and restore biological communities and their associated ecosystem foundations. Now let's talk about some important species concept. The first one is keystone species. Some species called keystone species form a central supporting hub in the ecosystem. The loss of such a species results in collapse in ecosystem function as well as the loss of coexisting species. The importance of a keystone species was shown by the extinction of stellar sea cow through its interaction with sea otters, sea urchins, and kelp. Sea urchins feed on kelps, while sea otters feed on sea urchins. With the rapid decline of sea otters due to overhunting, sea urchin population grazed unrestricted on the kelp beds and the ecosystem collapsed. Left unchecked, the urchins destroyed the shallow water kelp community that supported the stellar sea cows died and hastened their demise. The sea otter is a keystone species because the coexistence of many ecological associates in the kelp beds relied upon otters for their survival. On a lighter note, sea otters are the only marine mammal without a layer of blubber. They need to eat 25% of their body weight a day to keep warm and healthy. Please you also search some examples of keystone species in different ecosystems and share in the comment box. Umbrella species are defined as species selected for making conservation related decisions, typically because protecting these species indirectly protects the many other species that make up the ecological community of its habitat. An example of an umbrella species is the monarch butterfly because of its lengthy migrations and aesthetic value. The monarch migrates across North America, covering multiple ecosystems and so require a large area to exist. Any protection afforded to the monarch butterfly will at the same time umbrella many other species and habitats. An umbrella species is often used as flagship species, which are species such as the giant panda, the blue whale, the tiger, the mountain gorilla, and the monarch butterfly that capture the public's attention and attract support for conservation measures. The annual migration of North America's monarch butterfly is a unique and amazing phenomenon. The monarch is the only butterfly known to make a two-way migration as birds do. Unlike other butterflies that can overwinter survive as larvae, pupa, or even as adults, in some species, monarchs cannot survive the cold winters of northern climates. Using environmental cues, the monarchs know when it is time to travel south for the winter. Some fly as far as 3,000 miles to reach their winter home. Last is the indicator species concept. An indicator species has a narrow set of ecological requirements, therefore they become useful targets for observing the health of an ecosystem, for example, trout. Indicator species are monitored in an effort to capture environmental degradation through pollution or some other link to proximate human activities. Monitoring an indicator species is a measure to determine if there is a significant environmental impact that can serve to advise or modify practice, such as through different forest silviculture treatments and management scenarios, or to measure the degree of harm that a pesticide may impart on the health of an ecosystem. Silviculture is the practice of controlling the establishment, growth, composition, health, and quality of forest to meet diverse needs and values. Can you share the optimum conditions for the survival of a trout in the comment box below?